Hey, I'm Trey. This story is about a serial killer that was filled with hate since birth. The only life ambition for this killer was to murder everyone in the world. To understand this type of rage, you would just have to listen to some of the things that the killer said after his eventual apprehension. If you enjoy more stories such as these, I upload new content every Tuesday and Thursday. Well, if you're ready, let's get started. 1971, in the country of Australia, a child by the name of Matthew James Harris was born. Both of his biological parents had an open sexual relationship with one another with no commitment. His mother became unintentionally pregnant, so Matthew was born and he was given up for adoption. An unnamed adoptive parent took Matthew in, and he was raised in the town of Wagga Wagga. His adoptive parents cared for him, but were unable to provide the love that he felt he could receive from his biological parents. Unfortunately, Matthew never knew his parents. This left Matthew bitter and resentful. His anger was not focused at anything or anyone in particular, but with life in general. As a youth, he would get into all types of trouble. He was open to all types of petty crimes, ranging from trespassing, vandalism, on up to theft. Matthew would have violent urges when triggered. He would initiate fights over the smallest transgressions. As a young adult, he lived his life aimlessly, with no real guidance or direction. He lived his life to binge, drink alcohol, and partake of illegal drugs. Matthew would walk his neighborhood regularly, and most of the people in the community knew about him being a potential problem, but he did have a few friends. As my grandmother used to say, crazy knows crazy. A friend by the name of Kenneth Frazier came along for the ride whenever there was an opportunity for them to steal money for alcohol. Matthew's angry streak became intense when more of life's problems began to appear to him. With his now increasing alcohol dependency and drug addiction, the stakes were a bit higher now than previously before. June of 1998, a woman by the name of Trang Nugent happened to be home with her 3 children. Matthew, along with his friend Kenneth, went to the door, knocked, and waited for Trang to answer. She then opened the door enough to peer through and see who was standing outside. This is when Matthew and Kenneth forced their way into the home and threatened to kill them all at night for their money. She didn't have much money, but she gave them all she had, which was only $58. The men left abruptly after, but not before threatening to kill her and her children if she notified the authorities. Due to fear of retribution, Trang was not much of a good witness at the time. The police had no leads or clues. Although this was just a robbery, Matthew felt empowered after the attack. At that moment, Matthew realized that when he told Trang that he would kill her, he really felt that he meant it. From then on, he enthusiastically wanted to experience murdering someone, but he just didn't have a plan yet. 4 months later, Matthew's addictions made him more desperate. This fueled his anger and made him more dangerous even to his friends. A friend of Matthew's by the name of Elaine John lived with her 62-year-old brother, Peter Winnenbaum. Matthew knew Elaine's schedule and knew that she would not be home at that time. He went by the house and pushed his way in when Peter answered the door. Matthew closed the door behind him when he entered and then attacked Peter immediately. During the struggle, he strangled Peter to death. He then stole whatever he could find of value and fled the location. The authorities did not have any witnesses or clues of it. When Peter was eventually apprehended, he explained to the authorities, I'm paraphrasing now, Peter was just an old man and he was able to kill him with ease. He also stated that Peter did not put up too much of a fight for him. The authorities noticed that during Matthew's interview, he almost seemed pleased with himself about being successful in killing Peter. Before Matthew's interview, he would walk around the neighborhood and always kept his head on a swivel looking for opportunities. One day he noticed a woman by the name of Yvonne Ford, who suffered from a minor mental handicap. The woman lived alone, and Matthew could tell that she was lonely based on his conversations with her. He befriended her just in order to use her as he saw fit. Matthew had been planning this for months. He would invest time talking to her and also driving her around if she needed to go places just to build up her trust with him. Just 2 weeks later, after the murder of Peter Winnenbaum, Matthew had been walking about the neighborhood looking for opportunities to earn some cash for his drug and alcohol addiction. He decided to see what Yvonne was doing at that time. Yvonne at the time was lonely, so she invited him in. Eventually, they wound up in the bathtub together. While in that bathtub, Matthew felt himself become enraged for no apparent reason and decided to kill anyone at that moment. It just so happened that Yvonne was in the presence, so he decided to choke her unconscious. Afterwards, he shoved her head in the bathtub full of water, killing her. When he was eventually apprehended, the police asked him why he did this. I'm paraphrasing. He said he felt unbelievably and uncontrollably enraged. He had been angry at the world and he was holding it all in since the day of his adoption. Matthew also mentioned to the police that he felt extremely powerful being able to just take a life with ease because he felt like he wanted to. After Matthew was done, he stole whatever he could carry and fled home. The police didn't provide any information on when and how Yvonne's body was initially located. 2 weeks later, after the murder of Yvonne, Matthew admitted that he still was feeling emboldened after getting away with 2 homicides at that point, and went on to ask his friend Elaine John to borrow her car for a few hours. Elaine, still unaware at the time that Matthew was responsible for the murder of her brother, so she allowed him to use her car. Matthew drove the car to his house, and while he was there, he observed his neighbor being home alone. His neighbor, Ronald Galvin, just so happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. Matthew felt like he needed to kill someone, and in his mind, he believed that this would make him feel better. Matthew talked his way into the house, and as soon as Ronald turned his back, Matthew strangled him to death. When the authorities eventually caught up to Matthew, he was asked why he killed Ronald, and his only response was, "I'm paraphrasing this now." He had a lot of pent-up anger, and he needed to release it. Pretty much anyone could have been murdered at that time by him. As I mentioned before, the authorities did not explain how they had ultimately targeted Matthew as the actor, but after his apprehension, he gave a full confession for everything that he did. Along with those confessions, he also gave explanations on why he did each murder. During one of his last interviews with the police, Matthew quoted, "To murder and to keep murdering and to get away with it is an achievement. I'd still be killing if I hadn't been caught." A psychological evaluation was completed, and it was determined that he suffered from schizotypal disorder. Matthew was charged, found guilty, and given a double life sentence with an additional 40 years. If you enjoy more stories such as these, just click on one of the suggested videos above. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and notification button so you can be reminded of new content that I upload every Tuesday and Thursday. God bless and stay safe.